Hello everybody, welcome back to Whimsy Craft. I hope you all are doing great. First of all, a very happy Bengali New Year to you. This is my first video after the Bengali New Year. So I thought in today's video I will talk about 5 myths about orchid plants that you need to debunk right now. So if you are new to my channel, please hit the subscribe button and don't forget to like this video and tell me in the comments below where you're watching this video from. So without further ado, let's dive into the video. Well, the 5th myth about orchid plants is that they can be grown very easily from seeds. Well, monkey orchids, dove orchids, we have seen it all. Thanks to Photoshop and other photo morphing apps, we often get derided or misled by different pictures that prompt us to buy particular products which do not really give us the same outcomes that we desire, right? So, you will often find different websites on internet selling seeds of orchids claiming to give birth to different kinds of orchid plants which look weird. Well, I do not know whether these weird looking orchids do exist. I will attach 2 pictures here for your reference. But the point is, orchid plants under normal circumstances, as in a home environment, is very difficult to grow from seeds. I have had one orchid plant, the seeds are microscopic, almost very minuscule, and they will just not work if you sprinkle them on seeds like you did in my strawberry video and cover them in cling film and wait for them to germinate. Coco peat is not going to work for orchid seeds like that, and even if they do, they are going to take a great deal of time. So, stop buying orchid seeds and instead invest in a proper orchid seedling or a mature orchid plant if you really want to keep orchids in your collection. Alright, myth number 4, orchids can be propagated by cutting. Well, this myth has 90% of myth element and 10% truth element, because if you have already seen my video on how to propagate orchid from cuttings, I link it up here in the I button, you will see that it is possible, but it is not really favorable or desirable, because first of all, not all cuttings will germinate into baby seedlings, and secondly, it takes a great deal of time. You lose most of the cuttings to fungus. So, in the backdrop, I am standing in my orchid corner. I do not know whether you will be able to see it. So, I will link a separate clip over here. This particular thing in my hand is the key of a Dendrobium, a phylum plant. This is my corner where I keep all my species orchids. These are the orchids which are wild in nature, they are not hybridized orchids. So, they have adapted to my surroundings, and this is a big proof how orchids reproduce in nature. So, what happens is, on mature canes there are these nodes and internodes from where new baby orchid seedlings emerge. They have their set of roots also growing out. So, you can, once they are at a desirable length, you can just dislodge them from the cane and pot them up or mount them up and get a new orchid plant. It is as simple as that. You just need some patience. If you try to propagate orchids like your hibiscus plants or any other normal plants that you have in your garden, which root easily using rooting hormone, you will be in for disappointment. Maybe they will work, but the chance of failure is mostly 85%, because we kind of are unable to always place the conditions right. So, unlike an ordinary plant like say a mango plant seedling or a rose plant seedling that roots easily due to rooting hormone, and once we stick it in soil, orchid plants do not really respond very well if you try to grow them from cuttings. It is not impossible, but it is very difficult, so I would not encourage it. Alright, myth number 3, orchid plants need a special soil and a lot of care. Well, I am not a person who puts in a lot of care behind her plants, and if I can make orchids survive, anybody can. Coming to the media, most orchids, as you can see in the backdrop, are either epiphytes or lithophytes. Epiphytes meaning they grow clinging onto the surface of the trees, and lithophytes means they grow in the crevices of rocks and mountains, because mostly when we see orchids in their natural habitat, we find them in cooler regions in mountain areas growing in between crevices of rocks. So, that is the point. They do not really require any media. They are epiphytes, meaning they cling onto one surface and they derive their nutrition and nourishment from the atmosphere around. Now, they are under my care. So, every morning I water them, once a week I fertilize them during the growing season, and if need arises I apply medicines or insecticides or fungicides if need arises, not unnecessarily. There are a few orchid varieties which do need a growing media, like you have your vanilla orchid plants, you have terrestrial orchids, I mean like ground orchids or Spathoglottis, you have Paphiopedilum, you have Oncidium, Catasetum. There are a few varieties, the very low light varieties of orchids which do need a media, but for the for the larger category of orchids that are available so abundantly on the internet, when you scroll through internet, they mostly grow in a different kind of media and not really soil. In fact, I have this is LECA, light expanded clay aggregate, which is used as a substitute for broken brick pieces, because most of us do not have access to bricks, and orchids, like I said, they do well in a media where they can just cling on and use it for support. So, I have made a video on semi hydroponics on orchids, where I have used this particular clay aggregate to grow my orchid plants. So, it is not that they do need a lot of care and special media. I mean, they will do well even if you do not provide a media. If you tie them to a piece of wood and hang them, they will do pretty well. Regarding the care, they need a very basic care. What is important is to make the ambience favorable for them, alright. It is not that orchid plants only survive in cold regions. The ambience, if you can get it right, like I have tried to mimic the natural setup. You see, they are getting filtered sunlight over here. This is my mango tree. There is a natural canopy on top, and this is the early morning hours when they receive the sunlight. For the rest of the day, they are in bright shade. I have another orchid stand where the orchids are placed under green net. So, it is just more about creating a favorable ambience and then remaining consistent with your care. Only then can you make your orchid plants thrive. The second myth that I need to bust is that orchid plants are very expensive. Well, had this been 5 to 6 years back, I would have agreed, because 5 to 6 years back I myself purchased 2 orchids right at a time when orchids were not really a hot cake in the Indian gardening market. So, it has been 5 to 6 years, more people have become aware about orchids, more people have started growing orchids at home. So, there have been more sellers who have entered the market. So, the price has been mostly moderated. Okay. It is not that they are very expensive. I have seen hybrid hibiscus plants selling at higher prices than orchids here. So, if you are looking for one at a reasonable rate, try to get it from sellers. Okay. Local nurseries again are charging a fortune for orchids, but there are many online sellers. I do not want to recommend any of them for particular. I have many favorites. I have made multiple videos on many orchids from many sellers. You can check them out. You have them on Facebook. So, you have sources from where you can get orchids at reasonable rates. A seedling stage plant will be anywhere between 90 to 180 still at this time. Okay. You just need to look for it, and intermediate plants can range anywhere between 200 to 350, and of course, mature plants are 500 plus. Like I told you in a previous video, you pay for the time when you are buying an orchid plant, and not only orchid plant, any other plant. A seedling would cost you very little, but a grown plant with flowers, say blooms, would cost you even more, because you are paying for the time that has gone into growing that plant into a mature one. So, it is it is obvious, and orchid plants are not really as expensive as you think. If you try to get limited edition orchids, of course, they will cost a fortune. Try to buy easily available, easily growable orchids and begin your orchid journey, and then step up if you want to by collecting specimen samples, not at the outset, because most of the time what happens is with beginners, we become all excited, we invest a hefty amount and get a few limited edition collection or get a few difficult to grow varieties, and then we are unable to take care of them and ultimately we lose our money also, our plant also. If you want to avoid that from happening, so go and invest in a very simple hybrid. Begin with a dendrobium, hybrid dendrobium, and you will be good to go. Well, it's time for the first and the topmost myth of orchids that needs to be busted. Well, the first and topmost myth about orchids is the fact that they only grow in cold areas. Well, my videos are a blatant protest against this statement. I live in Kolkata. Right now the temperatures here are 38 to 39 degrees Celsius. They shoot up to almost 40 in midday, and it's very humid out here. But thankfully my orchids are doing fine. You can see I leave them out in the open. This is the mango tree right above my house's roof, terrace, and I leave my orchids out there. There is another stand right there on my terrace which has a green net. So you can well imagine what heat Kolkata experiences, and even in the midst of all those, I have had my plants flowering and thriving. So it's obviously a myth that orchid plants only grow in cold regions. Like I told you in my second point, orchid plants need the perfect atmosphere, the perfect ambience in order to grow. Heat definitely has a role to play in it, but orchid plants like hot and humid weather. They like a setup where there is a lot of airflow, there is sufficient moisture, and they do not get direct overhead sun so that they don't burn. So that is the idea. If you can provide such a setup, even naturally or artificially, you have seen many people growing orchids indoors using grow lights, only then you can grow orchids. It is not that the weather has to remain bone chilling cold or very cold for that matter in order to grow orchids. That is definitely not true. Yes, you have to be careful about choosing orchids according to your weather and climate. I have chosen mostly species orchids because they fend for themselves. They are wild growing plants, so out in nature also when they grow, nobody really goes up to them and sprays water on them or gives them food. So they fend for themselves. So this is my species orchids corner. Here I have Rhynchostylis retusa and foxtail, that is a foxtail orchid, and Dendrobium ophyllum plants over here. And on my orchid stand under a green net, I have my Dendrobium hybrids, I have my Hoyas over there. So mostly they are Dendrobium hybrids. So I have chosen these two. I have tried my hand at Phalaenopsis, but even when growing them indoors, I have not really succeeded much. So I have given them a break. Vandas will also do very well in my climate, but due to space crunch, I am not venturing into them. So it really depends on your weather. If you have a particular type of weather, do some research, choose the type of orchid that will do well in your weather accordingly. Dendrobiums are very, very forgiving, especially hybrid ones, and I have a few species Dendrobiums also, like I told you, a phylum over here. So they are really forgiving, and if you are consistent with your care, like I said, they will reward you with blooms. Just give them some time, give them some consistency, and it's not that only cold places can harbor orchids. If a place like Kolkata, where the weather is so humid at this point of the year, even then the orchids flower. In fact, there are a few spikes on my Rhynchostylis plants already. They bloom every year during this time. So that itself proves the fact that you do not need cold weather to grow orchids. They grow very well in any climate. In some places it is a bit difficult, but in some places it is very, very easy. I hope you enjoyed my content. Please comment down below how you liked my content, where you are watching this video from. Please follow me on my Instagram page @whimsycrafter and also on Facebook @whimsycrafter. Thank you so much for watching this video. Take care and go whimsy.